Welcome, everybody, to Talking Books with Tanisha. I am Tanisha, and I have two beautiful guests with me here today. We have Dr. Caprice Hollins and doctoral candidate Ilsa Govan, who are the co-founders of Cultures Connecting LLC. And they're here to talk about a second edition of their book coming out very soon called Facilitating Conversations on Race. And we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. First, I want to say thank you for being here. So thanks for being a part of this conversation.
Thank
For
you.
those of you who are watching, Ilsa and Caprice are amazing, and they have been mentors to me along my journey around as a racial equity consultant. And to be able to talk about this book with them is just a privilege. So I hope that you'll be learning some really great things and also maybe hearing some things that can help your practice. So the first question I have is, why is this book so important right now?
Yeah. Um, Thanks so much for inviting us, Tanisha. It's really great to be a part of your program, and I love your mission with these videos. Uh, I One of the things that I think about right now with with where we're going with the inauguration happening next week and the pushback against DEI that we're seeing across the country, I think that a lot of people's first impulse is to go into hiding and to pull away from the conversations about race and racism. Or if we recognize that we disagree with somebody, then, oh, okay, well then the voices that are in favor of racial equity tend to be the ones that feel like we need to get silent. And I actually think that we need to be stronger than ever in our ability to take those risks, to have the hard conversations, to not just see a potential disagreement or even conflict as something to be avoided, but really something to dig into. In fact, I think that we're not going to move towards a nation that feels like we can really come together and support one another in the way that I believe that we need to in order to address the inequities that persist in our society if we can't first start with having the conversation with one another. And so the new edition of this book, as well as the old edition, Caprice and I are really trying to equip people in facilitating these conversations with one another, but also in our everyday lives. Like, how can we be more aware of ourselves? What do we need to know about other people? And how can we dive into the tension and sit in that together and actually learn and grow from one another through that process?
Yeah, thank you. That is beautiful. Caprice, do you want to add anything to that? Nope. You're on mute.
No, the only thought that just comes to mind, I know you said like, why now? I just say these conversations have always been needed. All of us know this. And so there's really nothing new there. It's just, I feel like it's just more evident, more visible, more tangible in how much these having hard conversations about racism and inclusion and belonging. Yeah, it's just more visible. So, but we've always struggled with this.
Right.
I know I have.
So I think with that struggle, and I think like the kind of like the relevancy of this being such an appropriate thing for us to be looking at and paying attention to right now, what do you hope that readers and practitioners are going to take from this book?
Yeah, one of the things I feel like one of the things that's really hard about writing a book on how to facilitate is that you're trying to make something that's really adaptive in nature, meaning it just all depends, right? Versus a cookbook approach. You're trying to make it more technical so that the readers can really visualize themselves or imagine themselves kind of doing certain things or taking certain steps. And I think that we've gotten clearer, in our own practice around like what is it that we're doing that works and what is it that we're doing that makes things worse rather than better. And I'm hoping that the readers feel a clear sense of here are some things, I should say, we're hoping, here are some things that you can do that instead of that bridges the divide. I would say that bridges the divide. And I feel like I've gotten clear personally just around being able to name that this work is really about belonging.
Mhm.
And I remember when I shifted from saying DEI to belonging, and I think that comes across clear in our book, that ultimately we're trying to create a culture where no one's identity becomes a barrier to them having access to healthcare, to a good education. No one experiences this further marginalization, but instead have access and opportunity. And as Ilsa said, I think that starts with the conversation. So that's what I'm excited about. I feel like we've grown, we've learned since then, and we've been able to put that into the book, along with things like how to facilitate virtually, which we
Yeah.
can talk about our journey in learning that. Um,
Ilse, you want to add anything to that?
I don't really like, yeah, I don't even remember what the question was, but something I'm excited about with the book. And one thing that I know when Caprice and I do the workshop that accompanies the book usually are either virtually or in person, one of the things that we do is we tell a lot of personal stories and we try to use our own personal growth as a model for other people. And, and I think that kind of vulnerable leadership is really useful for people to see in action because we talk a lot about vulnerable leadership and that's what's needed today, but people don't really get a chance to see that. And so
Mhm.
I'm excited about the way that I think that we really modeled that through the stories of the mistakes that we've made and what we learned from them. And in all honesty, Tanisha, doing the workshop, writing the book, many times feels like therapy for me. Because I'm like, oh man, that thing that we did, or that one time, and that time that I got fired, and that, or this person. And so processing through those stories does help me to think about like, what's my next move? And what way did I contribute to that problem? And what way did our society contribute to that problem? And what was the other person's work to do?
Mhm. I appreciated that as I was reviewing my copy and just the way in which you all have so I kind of read it as a narrative, like as a story, right? And it definitely is like a guide. It's definitely, in many places, like, kind of like a workbook and a way to kind of do some internal thinking as you're also kind of preparing to lead or just be in conversation. Um, but it also is like it helps us get to know you two, the authors, as like people, like just, people who happen to have like, this deep knowledge base and also are human beings who are trying to figure it out as well. So I do hope that vulnerable leadership piece will be kind of, exciting and also inviting for people who are like, I'm just trying to figure this out. It's my first time ever kind of dipping my toe into this. Like, what if I do this? Well, turn to page so and so, we'll show you how Ilsa did, or how, Caprice did it, or what they learned from that. And that feels very encouraging. So thanks for doing
yeah.
that story.
The way I think about that, and sometimes what I'll share in my workshops is, I have some expertise. I'm not an expert, but I have some expertise, and I'm going to share with you what I know, what I've come to learn and understand, and I'm sure I'll learn from you too. This kind of, I think Ilse and I approach this book and how we facilitate is we're on this journey with you,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
love it. Okay, so we've said quite a bit, but there might be more things that you would like to share about this new edition that maybe hasn't been shared yet. So anything you want to share with us about things we should be paying attention to?
Whew. I mean, Caprice,
Let me
how
look
long
at
have
my
we been
notes.
working on this? I think, you mentioned earlier, Caprice, like that one of the things is like when we wrote the first edition, clients would reach out to us and they would say, do you do virtual workshops? And we
Mhm.
would say no, because we don't believe that you can do the kind of deep personal work that's necessary for these conversations over in a virtual setting. And I don't know if you remember, but then we had a global pandemic and and in yeah, and in the middle of that, then we had the murder of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and the Black Lives Matter uprising and the country's attention and focus on issues of race and racism. And suddenly Caprice and I are facilitating conversations virtually. Our whole team is
Yeah.
nearly every day.
Hmm. Hmm.
busier than we've ever been in this steep learning curve. And not only that, but we're holding tension
Hmm.
that people are experiencing in a really different way than the tension had been there before. And we're also holding like people speaking up and talking from their heart and sharing their emotions, especially people of color who had maybe realized that they've been going along to get along for far too long and are now willing to say what's really going on for them. And white people showing up in our righteousness or our shame or, and so all of that we tried to weave in like what we learned from that experience. So it's not just about like the virtual strategies, but also how what is happening in our nation becomes a third player anytime that we're facilitating a conversation about race and racism,
Right.
including how it would be showing up now that looks different from what it looked like in 2020, that looks different from what it looked like in 2016. And so I feel like that focus on like that context is another rich part of the story that we didn't necessarily have in that first edition. And
Hmm.
Caprice, there's so much else. What would you add?
Mm. Well, I was just thinking about, yeah, I mean, it was just making me think about the time when we started facilitating virtually and you came to me and you were like, I don't know if we can do this activity anymore. And I'm like, oh, Ilsa, it's just the people, this activity is a tough one. And then eventually hearing it myself and hearing it a couple times. And then, I was teaching at the time and just what I was typically doing wasn't working anymore. And it took me a little bit of time to realize how much what is going on in any given moment is playing out in the room. And it's funny, Tanisha, because I would say those words. I
Hmm.
actually would, when I talk about knowledge as a part of the framework, I always say context matters, what's going on matters, but to actually be in it and experience how that is affecting how people are showing up. And so again, I'm excited about people getting to learn through our learning, as Ilsa said, through our mistakes.
Hmm.
We still get a little scared when people invite us to come in and facilitate after doing a train the trainer because it's one thing to write about it and it's another thing to actually be in that moment. I call it the I'm going to work hard for my money day because I had this beautiful agenda that I had planned and then real life happens in the room. And so I know we've got a lot more kind of strategies and tools to guide people. And the things that we have rewritten about that were in the first edition, I feel are so much clearer. So
Hmm.
we'll go back, right, as we're rewriting it. For example, the chapter on humor or even the
Yeah.
chapter on
Yeah.
nonverbals, like
Yeah.
how much was missing in there.
Hmm.
Like again, getting our writing down kind of the steps that it takes is, we rethought it and we
Yeah.
really operationalized it, I think, in a way that we hadn't before. And even still, it's adaptive.
Right.
Sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't.
Right, right. So here's the thing is that so I read both, right? And I saw it on the page, but I also felt the difference. And especially because
Mm,
I've used some of those tools, I felt it. Like I felt, sometimes you have a second edition, not really sure, like what's the difference going to be? Is you're just like rewriting another chapter? But I
mhm,
felt the difference. And so the growth that you're talking about, the kind of reflection that you're talking about, like as a person who took the first book and used it as a guide for my own work, I feel this second edition is just as relevant, it's not more relevant, more relevant than it is for my work too, like right now, right? So it doesn't feel outdated, it doesn't feel like, those are things I don't need anymore. It feels like, oh, this is perfect, like right now for
mhm,
this time, even as a veteran consultant and facilitator, there's something in there that I'm so excited to kind of be able to use and
mhm,
practice too. So, and probably one of my favorite things that I use like all the time is that ability to kind of see what's happening in the room without even saying anything, right? Like paying attention to how that mood is being created and what we contribute as facilitators to either add to that mood or ignore that mood or address that mood. Um, so those things that feel so slight are the things that hold a whole room together. Yeah, you all did some deep work on this. So I appreciate that effort. Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
you have so many other things that are happening too, because you're very busy people. So, but you're also like brilliant people. I know there's some books that you both have written separately. So I'd love to hear you talk or at least show the books to us. And then anything else that's coming up for you that you want our viewers to know about, now's the time to shine.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for the invitation. I do have a book, in fact. It's called What's Up with White Women: Unpacking Sexism and White Privilege in Pursuit of Racial Justice. Co-authored with my dear friend and colleague Tillman Smith. And this book is just, it's a real deep dive around my own identity. Like, who am I as a white woman who's been engaged in racial justice work for many, many years? And how do I navigate both sexism and patriarchy? And one of the things, like, I had a conversation with another white woman recently. And I said, yeah, white women are the people who are most likely to like reinforce the rules because white men make the rules and then we reinforce them in our engagements in communities of color. And it was just like, it's a really complex analysis. And at the same time, it's like, she was like, whoa, that explains so much. And and I'm really excited right now because actually, some of the work that I'm doing with Tillman right now just kind of organically emerged from some other white women that have been engaging around our book that are doing like these Beyond the Book Club or Beyond the Book Group meetings
Mhm.
where they're actually working the book. And a woman who actually I knew her for a while before I found out that she graduated from high school with my father from a random, like very small Catholic school in Michigan. And right. And she shared that she brought a group of friends together and they have been working the book and they're on chapter 8 and they've been reading it for a year and a half. And
Wow.
so I just love this idea. And so we're really looking now at how can we create and co-create together with these people who've been doing this, these like Beyond the Book groups, and what's the potential impact. So that's just like one of many things in addition to my doctorate program that I'm, or maybe as a part of my doctorate program that I'm really excited about.
Congratulations on that, by the way. Yes.
Thank you.
Or about you, Dr.
Uh,
Caprice?
oh, thank you for this opportunity. So my book, Inside Out, and I always tell people not the best title. I need to watch a little bit more TV. Didn't know it was a Disney movie, and it came out of my being the first director of equity and race for Seattle Public Schools, which of course is where I met you, Tanisha and Ilsa, and uh, just not really knowing how do I lead this work and uh, seeing that there are DEI positions springing up all over and wanting to give people a tool to guide them, a roadmap, so to speak. And I'm not just writing it to DEI consultants. I'm writing it to or DEI, people in the positions within an organization, but also consultants and to, anyone in an organization that says, I want to do something, but I don't know where to begin. And the idea of Inside Out, it's the Equity Leaders Guide to Undoing Institutional Racism, is first starting with ourselves,
Mhm.
because I was just seeing so many people, just kind of coming from this place. They're leading the work, but they're really saying what everybody else needs to do rather than modeling what the work looks like. Some of the people that I've come across where I've tried to practice some of the strategies in our train the trainer on inviting them to look at how maybe they have done harm. Some of the hardest people to engage are people who lead this work.
Mhm.
Like, it's easier to point out what other people are doing wrong. So that's the beginning of the book, and then it goes into what you can do in your organization, some strategies around, a little bit of strategies around conversations, facilitating, and I had developed a tool along with Dr. Jennifer Wiley, which Ilse and I have adapted many times, which is in it on looking at where your organization is at as far as its being a multiracial organization. And so I'm excited about that. And Ilse, I didn't know that about your book. That's great to hear. I love it when I come across somebody and they say, "Oh, my college is using your book." I'm like, "Really?" I've been at a couple hospitals doing book. I did one in person. I did one virtually where they're reading the book. So that's always reaffirming. But yeah, that's the Equity Leaders Guide to Undoing Institutional Racism. And by the way, we did change the name of this other book that you're interviewing us on because we wanted to make it more clear that this is about, facilitation, right?
Mhm. Yes, yes. Thanks for pointing that out. That's right. The first one is called Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Then it has a little bit of a subtitle. That's the cover behind me. And the new
Mhm.
one is about facilitating race conversations. Is that correct? Conversations about race.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So I want to thank you both for taking time to have this conversation with me. I have to just put a little plug in for Cultures Connecting LLC because the phenomenal training that's available, facilitation that's available, not training, facilitation that's available, is very much not only needed, but I think you'd all benefit from, from attending just because the experience is really beautiful. And being in the presence of you two would be a little bonus. So I think I just want to encourage people to look at that website. I want to thank you both for taking time today. Um, yeah, everyone else, if you like what you're seeing, like, subscribe, and share with other people. And thank you so much for being with Talking Books with Tanisha. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.